The Arizona Diamondbacks went on an improbable World Series run in 2023, just falling short to the eventual champion Texas Rangers. But there was a lot of optimism for this team going into 2024. They were bringing back a super high-powered offense, a couple really solid starters, and a bullpen that was great in the playoffs in 2023. Unfortunately for the D-backs, they would miss the playoffs by just one game last year, missing on the last day of the season after the Mets and Braves split a doubleheader. In 2025, they bring back that high-powered offense, and they also acquired a few huge pieces this offseason to help push them towards contention again. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll be putting out the rest of the teams in Major League Baseball by opening day. Let's go into a deep dive of the 2025 Arizona Diamondbacks organization. We'll start off with ranks for this Arizona Diamondbacks team, and every single thing you see on the screen here is going to be completely objective. My formula for these rankings are in the description. And a 13th ranked Major League roster for the Arizona Diamondbacks, led by the number 2 offense in all of baseball, one that finished first in runs, first in on-base percentage, second in average, second in OPS, but just lagged behind a bit in the homer and stolen base categories. The defense for this team was great as well, being the number 4th ranked team in all of baseball, but the pitching is really where it went wrong for the Diamondbacks last year. Starting pitchers 27th in ERA, relievers 25th in ERA. Given all the other stats in the formula, they came in at 23rd and 27th. And honestly, I thought that was going to be a bit of a plus for them in 2024. Just didn't end up working out that way. A farm system just below halfway in the league at 17 for the Diamondbacks. Have some pretty solid players coming up though. The minor league pitchers at 17 and the minor league hitters at 13. Torey Lovullo is the manager here for the Diamondbacks. This is actually going to be his 9th season already in 2025. 584 and 610 with Arizona, a 489 winning percentage. Mike Hazen came in the same year as Torey Lovullo, executive vice president and general manager for this Diamondbacks organization. 4 playoff appearances here in Arizona. I think he's done a real solid job at building a group from the ground up. I really like the franchise direction of this team. Last season, I mentioned, missed the playoffs by just one game, 89 and 73, 3rd in the National League West, a really solid division, but 7th in the National League. Payroll in 2024, $178 million, so they're willing to spend money. They did sign a couple guys again this offseason, and that raised their payroll to $180 million for this 2025 season. 87 and 75 projected by Fangraphs, but that's actually a step up for them. They're a bit conservative on their win totals. 2nd in the NL West and 5th in the National League. PECOTA gives them a 62.1% chance to make a playoff push this year, so we're really starting to see some pretty successful teams in this series now. You can get excited about this top 100 draft capital too for the Arizona Diamondbacks, 18, 29, and 92. Funnily enough, they lost one of their picks in signing Corbin Burnes, but they got one back when they lost Christian Walker at 29. So we'll go into the top contracts there. Corbin Burnes, I just mentioned, $30.8 million, kind of a weird contract, a long-term deal with an opt-out really soon into it. Jordan Montgomery still on this roster. He was a big potential trade candidate into this offseason, just didn't really have the value for the Diamondbacks. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, $20 million there, another guy who has kind of came in and underperformed his contract. They last made the playoffs in 2023. Their park factor, which is really just a measure of what type of stadium you play in, a hitter's or a pitcher's park, is 101. That's 7th in the league in hitter's park, so Chase Field is hitter friendly. And then in terms of organization success, a couple pretty solid teams. Reno Aces and Hillsboro Hops, both over 500. Visalia Rawhide also just a bit over 500 at 67 and 64. The Amarillo Sod Poodles last year, 58 and 79 in AA. In terms of season storylines for the Diamondbacks, I think my biggest one is the rotation questions. I have Jordan Montgomery pictured here. He's still on the roster. He might start some games to start the season. I wouldn't expect him to be here all year, though. That rotation came in at 24th ranked in baseball last year, and they do need to take a step forward. Although they just brought in Corbin Burnes this offseason to shore up the top of that rotation, I think I have a bit of concern for maybe the back end of this rotation. Guys like Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, although they have track records, had pretty tough seasons in 2024. And then second here, who's the closer for this team? AJ Puk I have pictured here. You're going to see 3 guys when we get to this Diamondbacks bullpen that are really, really solid. A question between 2 of them, AJ Puk and Justin Martinez, 2 really good pitchers. Who's going to end up closing games for this team? And then finally, they were an offensive powerhouse last year, coming in first in a few offensive numbers and second in a couple others as well. Second overall in my rankings. Can they keep generating the same success offensively to supplement a much better rotation and bullpen, in my opinion, this year? Let's see in 2025. Into top Major League offseason additions and subtractions, everybody on this screen is either projected positive WAR in 2025 or had positive WAR in 2024 for the subtractions. We'll get it started here with Corbin Burnes, 6 years, $210 million, the biggest free agent Arizona has ever signed. Kind of a weird deal. Opt-outs all throughout this contract. I assume he'll be here for a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if he opts out at some point and tries to get some more money. A real solid 1 for this team, projected just under 4 WAR in 2025. Josh Naylor, first baseman, over in a trade from Cleveland. A solid replacement for Christian Walker at first base and a younger version of him, in my opinion, from the left side. Kendall Graveman brought in on a small major league deal, just $1.35 million for him. He pitched with Houston last season, projected .1 WAR. A couple offseason subtractions that are really going to hurt. The biggest one, just a 1-year deal last season for Jock Peterson. After he opted out of his contract, he's going over to Texas. He had 3 WAR last season, was an incredible hitter from the DH spot. Christian Walker, longtime first baseman here for Arizona, gonna look different in a Houston uniform, 1.5 WAR last year. Josh Bell and Kevin Newman, a couple position players that also left in free agency. And then Sewald and Cecchione were traded to Cleveland in that Naylor trade as well. A few losses here in free agency, but I think the Diamondbacks did a pretty good job in recouping a lot of value. Before I go into details here, I'll explain some numbers really quick on the screen. WOBA, weighted on base average, league average for that is going to be 310. Think about it as on base percentage, but everything is weighed differently, meaning a homer is weighed more than a triple, which is weighed more than a double, etc. Just a better way of weighting how you get on base. And then weighted runs created plus, league average for that is 100. Think about it as a general offensive statistic that measures all of your production from that side of the ball. Everything above 100 or below 100 that you are is going to be the percent better or worse that you are compared to league average. So Corbin Carroll projected to be 24% better than league average in 2025, 350 on the WOBA, 23 homers, 4.1 WAR for a young right fielder. Former Rookie of the Year, took a bit of a step back last season, but a great second half for him. Ketel Marte, by far the best hitting second baseman in baseball right now, projected to take a bit of a step back after he went psycho at the plate last year. 4.4 projected WAR, a switch hitting second baseman. Josh Naylor, I mentioned, brought in from Cleveland. He's projected 23 bombs and just under 2 WAR next year. Lourdes Gurriel Jr., really solid for this team since he came over from Toronto. 17 homers, 106 weighted runs created plus. Jake McCarthy, really good season for him last year after a down 2023. 3% better than league average on the projections, but just under 2 WAR. Eugenio Suarez, one of the more consistent hitters in all of baseball, projected 2.3 WAR and 23 homers, a big power guy at the third base spot. Pavin Smith, will get into him a bit later. I gotta tell you, there's a lot to like there. 10 homers and 7% better than league average on the projections. Gabby Moreno, a really solid young catcher. He's also projected to be top 10 at his position in WAR this season. And then Geraldo Perdomo just extended. The Diamondbacks really like him defensively. The only guy in this lineup projected under 100 weighted runs created plus. On the bench, Jose Herrera, the young Jordan Lawlar, Randal Grichuk, he'll be in here every single day against left-handed pitching, and then Alek Thomas also on the bench. I would expect those last 3 guys to get a lot of run this season. A really solid rotation led by Corbin Burnes, now projected a 3.33 ERA, 24% strikeout rate, just under 4 WAR. Gallen and Kelly have been here for a few years now. You might have seen them in the 23 playoffs. Both really solid pitchers. Neither of them as good in 2024 compared to 2023, but I think they both have a lot of good left in them. Eduardo Rodriguez here on that big deal. Not a great season last year, but the numbers projected are pretty solid. Brandon Pfaadt is your youth in this rotation, and he's been pretty solid the last couple years. Projected 2 WAR for this rotation, and then some other contributors to this rotation. Ryan Nelson, Yilber Diaz, one of my favorite prospects in baseball. We'll get to him. Blake Walston and Tommy Henry. A bullpen that had a really down season in 2024, but one that I really like. AJ Puk and Justin Martinez are both disgusting. 2 really, really good relievers. Justin Martinez might be in the best reliever that you've never heard of category if you don't watch any Diamondbacks games. Just under 30% strikeout rate for both of those guys. Kevin Ginkel, really solid in the playoffs in 23. Had a good year last year, projected to be a high leverage guy for this team. Ryan Thompson, a negative arm angle, so we're getting some sidewinding action for him. A really solid pitcher. Joe Mantiply, former All-Star, 3.59 ERA projected next year. Welcome back, Shelby Miller, 4.33 ERA on the projections. Dre Jameson, a young guy, going to give you some innings this year, 3.8 ERA projected. And then Monty in the back of this bullpen, he might start some games. We'll see what we get out of him in 2025. So before I go into these breakdowns, I'll give you some numbers on the screen. We're going to have player cards. All of the OFF, BSR, and DEF numbers are going to be your run values by Baseball Savant. They'll be listed in percentiles compared to the rest of the league. On the cards, it's going to be wins above replacement per 162 since 2022, your slash line, weighted runs created plus, and WOBA. Remember, league average for those are 100 and 310 respectively. Homers, steals, and games played alongside their age. And then on the Baseball Savant page, you're going to see a lot of hard hit stuff, a lot of plate discipline stuff, defense, and base running. And then at the top, some expected numbers. So I'll get right into Gabby Moreno, the starting catcher for this team, just 25 years old, and man, has he been valuable. 3.9 WAR per 162 since he's been up, 7% better than league average offensively last year in just 97 games. He was dealing with some injuries. Really good on the plate discipline side, won't strike out very often, walks a lot, doesn't chase, doesn't whiff. Hit the ball pretty hard, but could be a bit better in that area. I think that's where he takes a step forward offensively. Defensively, he gets a lot of value there as well. The only thing he's not well above average in is blocks above average, but still a positive in that area. Brought over from the Blue Jays a couple years ago as a top prospect in a trade for Dalton Varsho, and he's been great here ever since. 733, 747, and 733 OPS the past 3 years. Hasn't had the perfect bill of health. I think that's where you would like to see the step forward out of him this year. A guy who has improved offensively every single year, specifically in the plate discipline section. Post All-Star break last year, an 847 OPS in 88 plate appearances. One of the more valuable catchers in the game in terms of offense and defense combined. Your backup catcher here is Jose Herrera. He didn't get a ton of run last year, just 42 games. Not much of a hitter last year at the major league level. The catching was all right, not great. Two guys that don't really excel in the blocks area. He's actually been a negative value the past few years since he's been up. A guy whose best trait is plate discipline and pop time. He can bring you a couple things behind the plate as a catcher, just not really going to have a great offensive profile for you. Pre-All-Star, he has an 876 OPS in 2024, just 23 plate appearances for him though. A guy that you don't expect to play a ton. I think I would almost expect Arizona at some point to bring in another catcher or bring up another guy from the minors to replace him in this spot. Josh Naylor over in the trade from Cleveland, 27 years old, 2.8 WAR per 162, so he's been really valuable as well. He gets a lot of his value from his bat and specifically his power, 31 homers last year. He's going to be out there almost every day as well. 152 games last season. He slugged 456. A lot of good numbers on that Savant page. Everything is about above average except for chase, rate, and launch angle sweet spot. Launch angle sweet spot, by the way, is the percent of time that you hit the ball between 8 and 24 degrees in the air. I think he can take a step forward in that category this season. If he starts hitting the ball at advantageous launch angles, he could start to get this harder contact hit into the air more and even up that home run total from 31 last year. A bit of a step back in terms of rate stats from a really good 2023 season, an 843 OPS that year. His big thing in 2023 was he became more of a bat-to-ball guy. His expected batting average all the way up at 293 that year. Last season, dropped it a bit, but the homers went way up. A guy who hits both sides of the plate, especially the last 2 years, you can keep him in there every single day. A dude who had an 816 OPS in the first half, 717 in the second half. Really excited about Josh Naylor here in Arizona, a guy who can take Christian Walker's spot and be just about as good as him, although he won't bring what Walker brought defensively. Another real good power bat, this time from the left side. Really excited for this one. Ketel Marte, the best second baseman in baseball, 31 years old, 4.5 WAR per 162. You can see that in his offensive profile. 51% better than league average last year, 36 homers in just 136 games at second base. In the 96th percentile of run value offensively last year, a great defender too, 83rd percentile in the defense and well above average in base running. Really does everything well. As a right-handed hitter, he absolutely murks pitchers, over a 1 OPS from that side of the plate, but also a good hitter as a lefty. really all red on this baseball. Savant paid shouts to Cardi. The launch angle sweet spot, again, is one thing he can improve on. Man, if he figures that out, we could be talking about one of the best hitters in the game, if not there already. For a while, Ketel kind of had an every other year thing going on, but 2023 was a real solid year, an 843 OPS, and then your last season, you feel really good about Ketel going forward. He really just took his 2023 season, sacrificed a bit of the strikeout and walk rate, and just started crushing the baseball. A great first half followed by a 1.066 OPS in the second half, 17 homers, the best second baseman in baseball, and such a fun player to watch. Ketel Marte, your second baseman. Eugenio Suarez, really good third baseman, came over from Seattle a couple years ago, had a good year last year, 4 WAR per 162 from the third base position, a really underrated defender as well, 65th percentile in run value there. 30 homers last season. You'll see that's a trend. He does that almost every year of his career. Really good on the launch angle sweet spot percentage. A guy who's going to hit the ball into the air a lot. The K rate and whiff rate is a bit of a concern. I don't know if I really see that hurting him as much though, because he's been doing that his entire career. Really good on the hard hit stuff. A big step forward in terms of results from a down 2023 season. The last 3 years for Suarez though, 30, 23, and 31 homers. So a real power threat from the hot corner. I actually been a much better defender the past couple of years as well. Got really good in 2023, 97th percentile range. 2024, 82nd there. Absolutely blew up after a really slow start last year. 668 in the first half, 943 OPS, 20 homers in 100 less plate appearances in the second half. A scorching July with 10 homers really helped towards that. A really good third baseman here in Eugenio Suarez. Geraldo Perdomo, the shortstop here, switch hitting, 25 years old, just about 2 WAR per 162, above average offensively for the Diamondbacks last year. Really solid base runner and really good in the plate discipline stats, 88th percentile on the base running. He's a guy who really just doesn't hit the ball very hard, so not a super high ceiling for him offensively, but he can do a lot of things, and if he can be an above average hitter like he was last year, you feel really good about the production you're getting from him. Historically taking most of his at-bats from the left side of the plate, been a platoon bat here and there the past couple of years, just 120 plate appearances against lefties, but he was actually better against them offensively over that sample. I would expect him to hit lefties more often this year, especially if Jordan Lawlar doesn't start this season on the Major League roster. Another guy who got better as the season went on, 739 OPS post All-Star. The last 2 seasons been about the same hitter, a 712 OPS in 2023. Took a bit of a step forward in some of the hard hit stuff last year, but just not going to be a super hard hit guy unless we get a complete profile shift from him. A really solid shortstop though, and the Diamondbacks liked him enough to extend him. Starting off a really solid outfield with Lourdes Gurriel Jr., 31 years old this season, just under 2 WAR per 162. He was about 8% better than league average last year, 18 homers, 7 steals in 133 games. And really just about league average in run value for everything across the board. He's a guy who hits lefties extremely well, takes a bit of a step back against righties. You'll see on the screen there 2027/2026 on the free agent year. He does have an opt-out after this season, so if he has a good year, we might see him do that. Some pretty solid hard hit numbers. He won't strike out very often. He just doesn't walk a lot. A pretty good defender out in left field as well. About as consistent as it gets the last 3 years, 757, 772, and 743 OPS. Did take a bit of a step back in the power department last year, wasn't hitting the ball as hard. Big theme with these Diamondbacks, second half an 844 OPS, first half a 716. Gurriel really had it going down the stretch. He's a big high floor option for this team because he's done the same thing offensively every year and he's above average as a defender. A good left fielder in Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Tale of 2 seasons for Jake McCarthy. Last season was a very good one. 3.6 WAR per 162, 10% better than league average, and really your biggest stolen base threat here, 25 steals last year. A bit scary on him. The hard hit numbers aren't very good. He doesn't walk a lot. He doesn't strike out a lot though, and he is a good defender and base runner, 93rd and 80th percentile in base running and defensive run value. He was just really good across the board last year, gave you a lot of solid numbers. Not a free agent until 2029, a guy who does hit righties much better than lefties. In 2023, 312 plate appearances to a 644 OPS, just 2 homers, a 318 on base, and a 326 slug. Just not a very good season there for McCarthy. I think, again, a real scary sign is the expected numbers are a lot of the same. He did square the ball up more last year, and that expected batting average was a bit higher, but everything else is really just about the same in terms of hard hit percentage. But a guy who I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt after a pretty solid season last year. We'll see if he ends up making any changes to his profile or if this is the hitter that he's going to be moving forward. So Jake McCarthy, a solid high floor center fielder. Talking about a tale of two seasons, this is a tale of two halves with Corbin Carroll. 2023, a great season, won Rookie of the Year. Overall, 5.1 WAR per 162. He's been just so valuable to this team. 7% better than league average offensively, 22 homers and 35 steals in 158 games last year, 100th percentile on the base running runs, and a good defender. The hard hit numbers last year aren't great, but a lot of the plate discipline stuff is. Got off to a really rocky start last year, a 635 OPS in the first half after a really good season last year. Second half, 919 OPS, 17 homers in 120 less plate appearances. He was just murdering the ball in the second half last year in August and September that were both really good for him. I think I have a ton of excitement for him because in 2024, the hard hit numbers took just a tick of a step back, but all of the plate discipline stuff got much better for him. In 23, an 868 OPS. The year before that, in really short run, an 830 OPS. He got extended for a long time here in Arizona. They love this guy. I would expect Corbin Carroll to be the best player on this roster in terms of WAR this season. Pavin Smith, I was not familiar with your game. 42% better than league average last year, 9 homers, a 377 WOBA in just 60 games played. I mean, look at this Baseball Savant page. Everything is above average or better. All of the stuff on the expected numbers are way up there, close to the 100th percentile in baseball. Funny enough, Pavin Smith had really good numbers last year, but even his expected numbers were better than that. A 395 expected WOBA compared to his actual 377 WOBA last year. Just a giant step forward for him. A guy who kind of had a track record of a high drafted player. He was 7th in the 2017 draft, who came up to the majors and just really couldn't get it going offensively. 642 and 667 OPS the 2 seasons before this. Last year, he just completely turned his career around. He wasn't even much of a hard hit guy in the past. All of his expected numbers are just off the charts. We won't see him very often against left-handed pitching, just 23 plate appearances last year, but a 754 OPS, so it's not like he can't do it. A real fun stat for him in high leverage situations, 1.371 OPS. We'll most likely see a platoon here with Randal, Grichuk. I'll go over in the bench section, but man, Pavin Smith absolutely crushes righties. If he puts these numbers up over a full season against right-handed pitching, we're going to talk about an extremely valuable designated hitter. So we'll get it started here with Alek Thomas, a lefty outfielder. He's been up for a while, a really solid playoffs in 2023. Just didn't really get it going last year offensively. 65 weighted runs created plus in just 39 games last year. I would expect him to have a bigger role, maybe play some more. He was dealing with some injuries last year as well, an outfielder here for the Diamondbacks. Jordan Lawlar, I'll go into a deeper dive on him when I get to the prospects section, but a really good young shortstop coming up through the system. 132 weighted runs created plus in the minors last year. Only played 23 games. He was dealing with some injuries. And then Randal, Grichuk, he's going to be in here against lefties almost every single day, and he was great against them last year. 39% better than league average as a hitter. Another Baseball Savant page that looks very similar to Pavin Smith. The Diamondbacks love to put their designated hitters in really advantageous situations. Grichuk against lefties and Smith against righties, and it works out to perfection. I think it's going to be one of the better platoons in all of baseball and one of the best DH spots here as well. A real solid, high-powered offense for this Diamondbacks team, and I think one that is going to be up there in all of the ranks again this season. We'll go into the pitching section of this video, and I'll go over some of the numbers really quick. On the right side, pitching run value, fastball run value, breaking run value, off-speed run value, all going to be in percentile rankings again. The Baseball Savant page will have expected numbers, some fastball velocity stuff, and then your hard hit against rates alongside your K rates and walk rates on that page. I'll also have your pitch usage and pitch miles an hour compared to league average. On the card, I went with wins per season because of the pitcher injuries that have been happening a lot lately. ERA, FIP stands for fielding independent pitching. We kind of see that as a projector of ERA over a long sample. Stuff Plus and Location Plus, two models built by Eugenio Suarez at Fangraphs. They're just going to be a measure of pitcher stuff and pitcher location compared to league average. 100 is league average for that. And we'll go right into the ace of this staff. Welcome to Arizona, Corbin Burnes. Last season was great for him, a 2.92 ERA, although the FIP was a big higher, really benefited from some good defense behind him. The stuff is still there for him. Good location on the pitches. 32 starts last season. A lot of the expected numbers are really good for him. The fastball velo is still up there. The chase rates are good. The whiff rates are good. All of his pitches were really solid, all above average. Just the model of consistency as a pitcher. I had the pleasure of watching him for a long time as a Brewers fan. 2.92, 3.39, and 2.94 ERA the last 3 years over 32, 32, and 33 starts. He has an absolutely diabolical pitch mix. Some of the best pitches you'll ever see. Took a bit of a step back in 2024 in terms of his off-speed pitches, but I think he can get that back this year. Brought in on that long-term deal, the biggest in Diamondbacks history, but has the option to opt out of this contract after the 2026 season. A 30-year-old starter, if you only get him for 2 years, it's probably going to be the best 2 years of pitching that you've seen in Arizona here for a long time. Really good starter in Corbin Burnes to lead off this rotation. No slouch here at the number 2 spot either. Zac Gallen is your number 2 starter, and he's been great the last 3 years. 29 years old, a bit of a step back in terms of results, but the FIP was pretty solid for him last year. A guy who's going to rely on his location more than his stuff. Really solid on the breaking and off-speed pitches in terms of location and how they got hit last year. He will be a free agent after this season. The big thing with him last year, the walk rate went up a decent amount. In 2023, it was 88th percentile. Last year, 39th percentile. The fastball velo has never been a strength of his. His fastball has been good, though, 98th percentile in run value in 2023. I think that's where he takes another leap as a pitcher. The last 3 seasons for him, a 3.65, 3.47, and 2.54 ERA, innings every single year. Last year dealt with a bit of an injury, so didn't throw the full season. Hopefully we get a full bill of health and another really great year from Zac Gallen in 2025. Merrill Kelly here as the 3 starter for the Diamondbacks, 36 years old this season, 2.4 WAR per year since 22, 4.03 ERA last year, a bit of a step back in a lot of the categories in terms of results and metrics, although it was still pretty solid. Another guy who is going to lean on his location more than his stuff. He is 36 years old. Another really solid pitch mix for him. He throws 6 different pitches, over 8%. The off-speed for him in the 98th percentile of run value. The fastball really got touched up last year, and you can see that in all of the expected numbers being really low. Gave up a lot of barrels last year. The last 2 seasons before this, a 3.29 and a 3.37 ERA. He did a lot better at generating chases in the past and getting that strikeout rate up, but that's tanked a little bit the past year. The fastballs have always been plus for him. Last year, it took that big step back, and that's what I think he needs to have this year to be successful. Only 73 innings from him in 2024, so some injuries he was dealing with. If he gets a full season, I do think he could go back to what he was before. Another guy who doesn't need to be throwing hard to pitch really well. He does good on his location. Another free agent after this year as well, although he'll be in his age 37th season in 2026. A guy who's been really good for the Diamondbacks and a real underrated pitcher here for a while. Eduardo Rodriguez came over from Detroit a couple seasons ago. Not a great season for Arizona last year. A 5.04 ERA. The stuff was down a lot. The location was even down a lot for him, although he was still above average. None of the metrics really liked his season last year, and it showed up in his results. The off-speed and breaking pitches were just a bit below average, and the fastball really got hit. He's a lefty starter, just 10 starts for him in 50 innings last year. A real solid 2023 for him in Detroit. Really good numbers across the board, a 3.30 ERA. All of the run values were up in the percentile ranks. The metrics have never loved him as a pitcher, but he did a lot of things better that year. The expected ERA and batting average numbers are much lower. A guy who I really think just needs to wash away 2024 from his mind and become that pitcher that he was in the past, because there's a lot of value left in that arm, in my opinion. Dealt with injuries last year, was never really himself. He only 31 years old, a good lefty in the past. A big X factor, I think, for this Diamondbacks season and the starting rotation in general. And then the last guy here, Brandon Pfaadt, just 26 years old. Really like him as a pitcher. Just been up the past 2 years in the majors. The results weren't great for him, but a lot of the underlying stuff really liked his season. A 4.71 ERA, but a 3.61 FIP. The stuff and location are both above average. The expected numbers really liked him as well. A guy who's not going to get a ton of strikeouts, but will be above average in that rank. Really good in the control area, 87th percentile in walk rate. The breaking pitches really got roughed up for him last year. First percentile in breaking run value. In 2023, not a lot of great results either. A 5.72 ERA for him, but he did pitch in the playoffs a decent amount for the Diamondbacks, including a really solid start against the Brewers in the first round. Breaking run value really tanked in 2024. Whereas the fastball and off-speed run value came up by a lot, I think he can improve in the breaking area and become a good overall pitcher. A guy who the Diamondbacks really want to succeed, a guy who came up as a former top prospect, and they allowed him to struggle at the major league level. I think he's really learned a lot these past couple years, a lot of big leverage moments for him. I'm expecting Brandon Pfaadt to have a really good 2025 season. The back of this bullpen for the Diamondbacks is absolutely diabolical. AJ Puk will start it off here, projected as the closer right now. Incredible in the stuff and location areas. 287 on the FIP, struck out almost 30% of the batters he faced. They brought him over from Miami last year, and he was incredible when he was here. All of the expected numbers liked him a lot more too as well. The chase rate, whiff rate, K rate, barrel rate, hard hit rate, expected ERA, expected batting average, all up there in the top 15th percentile in baseball. If Puk can limit walks in 2024, I would expect him to be one of the better pitchers in the league from the bullpen. And you could say the same exact thing about Justin Martinez, one of the nastiest pitchers in the entire game. The stuff plus at 122, struck out almost 30% of the batters he faced, but walked just about 12% as well, only 23 years old for Martinez. The highest fastball velocity out of any player in all of baseball right now. 72.2 innings for him last year. The barrel rate, hard hit rate are super low. Gets a lot of strikeouts, a lot of whiffs on his pitches, and he keeps hard contact in the park. If these two guys can figure out the walk issues, they might be one of the best back ends of the bullpen in baseball. And then we'll go over to Kevin Ginkel, the location guy of this group. 110 location plus. The FIP liked him more than the ERA as well, so I think 3 bounce back seasons from these guys. Still strikes out over 26% of the batters that he faces, but only walks 5.2%. Ginkel was huge for the Diamondbacks in the playoffs in 2023 and has been great almost every single year of his career. Good K stuff, good walk stuff. Does give up some pretty hard contact though. 23rd percentile in average exit velocity, 33rd in hard hit rate. Now slotting in as the 7th inning guy, Ginkel's one of the best in the game in that section of the game. A real solid back end of this bullpen for the Diamondbacks. We'll go into Ryan Thompson and the rest of this bullpen here. I mentioned earlier a sidewinder, really fun stuff. 3.26 ERA at 3.30 FIP last year. Won't get a lot of strikeouts, but can really locate his pitches. Generates chase rates in the 93rd percentile. The ground ball rate is 99th percentile in baseball at 62.7%. Joe Mantiply a step forward last year after a struggle in 2023. 100th percentile in chase rate. The expected ERA is really low as well. I think he takes a step back to his 2022 form in this 2025 season. Gets a lot of ground balls as well. Shelby Miller here on a minor league deal. He's going to be one of the options out of this bullpen. Was great in 2023, a 1.71 ERA. Last year took a pretty big step back in a lot of categories. Although the expected numbers do like him a lot more, doesn't walk a lot of guys and doesn't give up a ton of hard contact. The Diamondbacks are going to welcome back Dre Jameson as he missed the entire 2024 season. A 3.32 ERA in 40.2 innings in that 23 year. The fastball velo is up there. Generates a lot of chases and whiffs. I think a pretty solid pitcher in this bullpen. And then Jordan Montgomery, been the picture of consistency as a starter every season in his career except for last year. 3.20 and a 3.48 ERA the last 2 years. Not much different in terms of his baseball savant numbers. Just didn't get strikeouts and gave up way too much hard contact last year. I would expect him to pitch for the Diamondbacks when he's here, but I don't know how long that's going to be the case. Into this top prospect section, we'll start with Jordan Lawlar. I would expect him to break camp with the team this year. 60 on the Baseball America grade, 22 years old, dealt with injuries all of last year, so only 23 games, but was great in the minors when he was down there. 32 weighted runs created plus, a 60 hit tool, 70 run tool, and a really positive defender. They do have Geraldo Perdomo in the major league, so I don't know if he's going to be their long-term shortstop right now, maybe a second or third baseman. He's number 13 in Baseball America's top 100. Former 6th overall pick in 2021. He was up in the majors for a little bit in 23, but didn't have great results. results. I expect a lot from Jordan Lawlar this season. The second prospect, a guy who's really new to me, Demetrio Crisantes, 19 years old, a 55 Baseball America grade. Last year in A-ball was incredible, 43% better than league average offensively in those 63 games. A 7th round pick in 2022, but a guy that came up and started performing immediately. The numbers are great for him offensively, a 60 hit tool, a 50 power tool, not a great defender, not a great runner. He'll slot in as a second baseman most likely. I would expect him to have another really good season in 2024, 84 in the top 100. And then one of my favorite minor league pitchers in Yilbert Diaz got up to the majors last year, 7 games for the Diamondbacks, a 3.81 ERA in those starts, 28.1 innings, a lot similar in the minors, 3.80 ERA and 104 innings for him. 3 really solid pitches in the fastball, curveball, and slider. If he can develop that changeup into a 4th pitch, he takes a huge leap up, in my opinion. A guy who I really like, and he will definitely contribute to the Diamondbacks this year. Going over some notable infield prospects, Jansel Lewis, your number 5 prospect, 55 hit tool, 55 run tool, everything else in the 50s. 19 years old, got up to A-ball last year. Switch hitting shortstop with pretty solid numbers in the minors, 101 weighted runs created plus last year. Dude with 20 stolen bases in those 109 games. A fun shortstop prospect. Adrian Del Castillo, a catching prospect here for the Diamondbacks, 24 years old, got up to the majors and was great in 87 plate appearances, 146 weighted runs created plus. A guy who's done a lot of the same in the minors as well, projected to be a part of this team this year, 67th overall pick in 2021, and he's really grinded his way through the minors. A really solid catching prospect in Adrian Del Castillo. Gino Groover might be in contention for the best name out of anybody on any of these lists. 22 years old, AA, number 9 prospect, good hit and power tool, not as good of a defender. I do want to mention his real name is Lou James. I think that's almost as cool as Gino. Last season in the minors, 33% better than league average, walked over 11% of the time, only a 13 K rate, 10 homers in 61 games, a really solid prospect, third base, second base. Tommy Troy, a former first round pick, 55 hit, 55 run, 50s across the board for the rest of the tools. Got up to high A, really struggled last year. Sounds like he was dealing with some injuries. I would expect him to make a leap forward back to the player that he can be in 2025. Christopher Torrin, a shortstop second base prospect. Sounds like he's going to be playing a lot of second base moving forward. Just 19 years old, the number 12 prospect, a 55 field and a 60 arm tool, 55 on that hit. Last year, just an A-ball for Torrin, a 725 OPS in that season. Getting into these outfielders, you got to talk about Drew Jones when you talk about Diamondbacks prospects. The number 4 prospect in the system, now 21 years old. Really solid as a floor. Run, field, and arm tools are all really good. The hitting just hasn't came for him yet. The second overall pick in the 2022 draft, he actually did take a step forward offensively last year. 125 weighted runs created plus, although he's 21 in A-ball. Needs to move up the system a little bit quicker. 21 stolen bases. The strikeout rate was a bit of a concern, but he started walking a lot this year. Some really good progressive signs for Drew Jones moving forward. I would like to see him at a higher level in 2025. Slade Caldwell, 18 years old, the 29th overall pick in the draft for the Diamondbacks last season, has yet to play any minor league baseball, but some really solid tools. The hit, run, and field are all well above average. He'll be just 18 years old going into this season, the number 6 prospect for the Diamondbacks. Ryan Waldschmidt, really solid across the board, 22 years old, A-ball last year. The 31st overall pick in the draft in 2024 out of Kentucky, 803 OPS in 66 plate appearances down there in A-ball. I would expect him to move up these ranks pretty quickly as a college hitter. Pedro Catoy, 19 years old, the number 25 prospect for the D-backs. Solid run, field, and arm tools. The hit tool is up there as well. Not a lot of pop in his bat. Just got to the DSL last year. I would expect him to come stateside and get some more run over here. And then Jorge Barrosa, the number 27 prospect, a real compact guy, got up to the majors last year for the Diamondbacks. Not great numbers there. 55 run tool, a 60 field. A decent outfield prospect, I think, with a higher floor than a ceiling. But really good overall minor league numbers. 110 weighted runs created plus in 2023. Last season, just a 98, so he took a bit of a step back offensively, still walks over 11% of the time. I would expect him to be up in the majors for the Diamondbacks this year. So not a super high ceiling pitching crew here, but a couple guys I do really like. My favorite out of this group is Yu-Min Lin, 23 years old, got up to AA, number 15 prospect in the system. A really good changeup curveball combination. A guy who came over as an amateur free agent from Taiwan, so a really fun story. He took a bit of a step back with the numbers last year, a 4.05 ERA, and the strikeout numbers weren't as good. In 2023, though, a 3.86 ERA, struck out 10.38 per 9, has dealt with some walk issues in the past. At AAA, walked more than he struck out. Probably going to have to see a bigger run from him in AAA to determine if he's a major league starter. Only sits at 91 on the fastball. Christian Mena here got up to the majors for the Diamondbacks last year, just 3 innings though for him. 4.61 ERA in the minors, 21 years old. He got 95.2 innings last season in AAA. Was actually acquired in a trade with the White Sox in February of 2024. Hasn't had great numbers the past few seasons, but his 2022 and 2023 seasons were all right. Need him to take a step forward in terms of production to really be a solid pitcher, but good K numbers throughout his minor league career. Joe Albies here had really solid numbers last year in the minors, 3.39 ERA, a 3.85 FIP over 135.1 innings. Not a huge strikeout guy, 7.45 per 9. Does walk 3.13 per 9 as well. Projects as more of a back-end starter, but a couple pitches that are pretty solid. The fastball and the changeup are pretty good. More of a control guy than anything. Daniel Egan, a draft pick from last season, has yet to get to a minor league team, but will in 2025. A 55 on the fastball, curveball, and slider. The changeup needs some development and the control as well. Number 16 prospect in the system. And then Yordan Chalas, relief prospect here for the Diamondbacks. The numbers last year weren't great. A 4.82 ERA when he got up to high A. Overall, a 4.09. Pretty solid numbers in A-ball. A real two-outcome pitcher, a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks. The whip last season at 1.54 in high A, you really just need him to be better in that area, but a couple pretty solid pitches for him. He's your number 20 prospect for the Diamondbacks. This projected 2028 lineup by Baseball America has a lot of youth in it, and I think that's something you can get really excited about as a Diamondbacks fan. Gabby Moreno still at catcher. I would expect him to be here for a long time. Corbin Carroll and Ketel Marte both on this team as well. Gino Groover they have slotting in at first base. Demetrio Crisantes at second base. Joncel Luis third base. Lawlar at shortstop. So a real fun high upside infield there. I'm really high on Jordan Lawlar and Luis long term. I honestly don't know as much about Crisantes. He's a guy that I think I'm going to do a bigger deep dive in the future. Watch out for a video on that eventually. Drew Jones in center field does really need to take a leap offensively. I don't know if 2028 is really the year that he's going to be up. Would be 24 years old. I think you need to see a lot more from him offensively to really make that designation if he's going to be in this lineup or not. But the big thing here for the Diamondbacks, a lot of differences. Really only 3 guys that have played a lot at the major league level. A lot of prospects. I think a real solid minor league system. Not ranked super high, but I think the top here is really good. I like a lot of these guys individually. I have a lot of high hopes for Jordan Lawlar, I mentioned. I think a fun, projectable 2028 lineup, and I would also expect the Diamondbacks to go out there and get some guys in free agency. This rotation projected by Baseball America is another strength, I think, of this team. Projected Burnes and Gallen to both still be here. We'll see how their free agencies work out. 2 guys, though, that it would be really tough to move on from. You do really like what you see from Corbin Burnes, and I actually think a lot of his stuff is really sustainable. Gallen, again, another guy who doesn't rely on his fastball velocity as much. That could be sustainable over a long period of time if the stuff is at least average. Big fan of Brandon Pfaadt long term. I think he's going to have a good year this year and specifically in the future. He'll definitely be here. Ryan Nelson, I didn't take a big deep dive onto him in this video, but I think he will be an option moving forward in this rotation. Just not a ton from the minor league system right now. Yelber Diaz listed as the 5 starter. I love me some Yelber Diaz. Another guy I might make a video on in the future, so just be on the lookout for that. And then Justin Martinez, 26 years old, an absolute flamethrower of a closer. I think going to be a great bullpen option. Might end up being an all-star this year. Love what I've seen out of Justin Martinez so far in his career. This is an interesting rotation going forward. A nice mix of vets and youth. I kind of like it here for the Diamondbacks. All right, and then just some final thoughts here on the Diamondbacks organization. After doing this deep dive, I'm all in on the Diamondbacks this year. I don't know if that's crazy to say. I think the pitching is a lot better. I think we're going to see steps forward from guys like Gallen and Merrill Kelly. I think Brandon Pfaadt's going to have a good season this year. Obviously, Corbin Burnes is Corbin Burnes. I think that starting rotation ends up being a strength of this team. I could see the Diamondbacks acquiring a guy at the deadline to really shore up this rotation as well. We'll see what we get out of guys like Eduardo Rodriguez or Jordan Montgomery, but if you get any type of positive from them, that is huge for this organization and specifically the pitching side. I think in terms of the pitching, just a lot went wrong that I don't see happening this year. I don't see them having the 24th ranked rotation, and also I do not see them having the 27th ranked bullpen. I love the guys in this bullpen. Puk and Martinez are two absolute studs at the back end. Kevin Ginkel's going to be a great 7th inning dude for this team. I like Ryan Thompson. I like Dre Jameson. I think Mantiply is going to bounce back a little bit. And then even Shelby Miller, if he ends up being in this bullpen, it would be, I think, a pretty solid option given what his 2023 was. Not much to even be said about this lineup. It's just high-powered across the board. I think they did a really good job at covering up some of the things that they lost this offseason. I think Pavin Smith can be a Jock Peterson light version this year. Maybe not give you the entire offensive profile that Jock did when he was here, but those Savant numbers just got you thinking devious things. I mean, Randal, Grichuk also really good against lefties, a great platoon there. They're good at every single position offensively except for shortstop, and Lawlar might come up to really help that out as well. The only place where I can see it maybe going wrong is if the offense takes a big step back this year, but I just don't know if I see that in the cards. Corbin Carroll didn't have a great year last year. Maybe guys like Jake McCarthy take a step back, but even then, I think this is a really good team. Organizationally, the minor league pitchers do need some work. I think that is an area they can shore up in free agency, though. I feel great about the Diamondbacks going into 2025. I think they're going to go over their win total, and they're going to be a playoff team this season. So if you're still here right now, thank you so much for listening to these videos. Please subscribe to the channel and like. I'm going to be putting out the rest of these by opening day. Really feel good about this Diamondbacks organization. This is a breakdown on the 2025 Arizona Diamondbacks.